We're going to look at Matthew chapter number 13, verses number 24. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. I'm going to go over this parable once again. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. Now, this man that he's speaking of, and again, the first interpretation of this is Jesus. He sowed good seed. That means the gospel, the good news, the good that's meant to go into his field. Now, the field is the hearts of man. Okay, that's what this is. So Jesus came, he sowed good seeds into the hearts of man. And that's where seeds are meant to be sown. If anything is going to bear fruit and produce in your life, it has to be in your heart. You can't just have it up here. It's got to be in your heart. When you really want to have a heart to heart, when something is really wants to reveal truth, you're speaking from your heart. When you learn something and just knowledge, you can forget about that. You'll forget about it before you leave church. But if you hide it in your heart and you reveal it there, it's going to produce things in your heart. And out of the abundance of what's in your heart, your actions change. Your speech changes. As it gets into your heart, so do you change. So ultimately, everything that we want to produce that is good, it has to come from our heart. You can't get an understanding, a knowledge of something, and expect that to change you. It has to be coming from your heart. But while men slept, while you were sleeping, the enemy never sleeps. The enemy never sleeps. While you think that things are okay and you're going on business as usual, the enemy is sowing tares. Tares are weeds. Tares are those things that are trying to choke away all the good in you. While you may have good stored up for a while, the tares are going to come all during the week and choke away the good that you got on Sunday. That's why we have to cultivate our crop every day. Get up and cultivate those weeds every morning. Every day you got to cultivate. You got to water. You got to continue to add to it, enrich the soil. Because the enemy is going to come and continually try and sow tares into your good seed. So while men slept, the enemy came, and then he went his way. But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, the tares also appeared. So when the good was produced, the evil came up with it. As it relates to tares, when you meet people, you meet wheat and tares. Okay? You meet the good in people, and you also meet the tares that's been sown into our lives over time. Because of environments, because of relationships, because of decisions we've made, because of experiences that we've had, it's produced sometimes good in us, sometimes it's produced tares in us. So when you meet someone, you meet wheat and you also meet tares. Now what do? When we meet somebody, we put our best forward. We trim our tares before we meet someone. So we appear to be all wheat. I met the wheatest guy. He was so wheat. In fact, he brought me a box of Wheaties. No, but we meet the wheat, right? And we always are going to give our best forward. So wheat. But ultimately, there are going to be tares, right? And we think about all the good. We think everything is going to be wheat all the time. It's wonderful to believe that way. We're optimistic it's going to be wheat all the time, but there are going to be tares. You meet someone, you say, oh, he is so cute. He chews, and his mouth is open. He kind of smacks when he chews. You know, he looks so cute. 6 months later, close your mouth. I'm tired of looking in there. Just making some. What happened to the wheat? Because tares are going to be in everybody's life. You're going to have wheat. You're going to have tares. Now, I want you to know that you have tares also. Just as you have to bear with someone else's tares, someone else is bearing also with yours. Nobody's wheat all the time. No matter how much we try, there's an enemy that's been in effect since the beginning of time. And every time we've done something good, the enemy has tried to choke away and produce tares what wheat was meant to produce. So I'm going to ask this question. What are some of the examples of tares that you may find in a person? What are tares? Now, let me give you an example of what wheat can be. Wheat can be goodness and gentleness and kindness and love and patience. And those are the wheat. Those are things that are good attributes of a person's character. What are some tares that may have been sown into the wheat in a person's life that we have to bear with? Some of the tares. If a person sometimes is rude or they're late or they have certain attributes that may not be positive, let them be who they are, right? It's okay to be, if you're true to who you are, be who you are. Don't make the attempt to try and pull up someone else's tares. We're not there to change people. That's what Jesus Christ does. As we model Christian behavior and we do the best we can to emulate and be examples of Jesus Christ, then that is what changes a person. Ultimately, he changes hearts, right? It's his work. It's not our work to change somebody. Oh, it'd be so much better if I could get rid of those tares he's got. It was fine. When I met him, he was this or she was that. But now all of these tares are showing up. So some of the tares is when you stop. How do we stop the tares? Okay, I'm going to get to that. A tares could be a lack of self-control. A person can have a tear that's a lack of self-control. It can be negative, quick to anger, jealousy, envious, stubbornness. Hey, stop talking about me out there. Negativity, having ego, a sense of entitlement, conceit, jealousy, short-tempered, insecurity, too much work. These are tares. That means that when you meet somebody, you're meeting all of this along with the good. You've got to put up with some of these attributes that are really just tares. And the tares has nothing to do with you. The tares were there before you showed up. So trying to do something about somebody else's tares is like trying to change the very nature of a person. So they produced the tares. But when the grain had sprouted, the tares appeared. Now, in verse 27, I want you to just listen to this. The servants of the owner came and said to him, "Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares?" He said to them, "An enemy has done this." The servant said to him, "Do you want us then to go and gather up the tares?" In other words, since these tares are problematic, if we could just get rid of the tares, then all we'd be left with is the good. And that's our belief. If I could just get rid of all those tares, they would be a much better person. So it's my responsibility now. It's my life mission is to get rid of your tares. If it kills you, I'm getting rid of those tares. So every day you get up and you're checking for tares and you're really stressing out about all the tares that you see because we don't like tares. We're a tear-free family. This is a tear-free house. And your job is to get rid of all of the tares because things would be so much better if you could just get rid of somebody's tares. But here's what he says. He says, "No, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them." That means that while the tares have grown in together with the wheat, they are kind of intertwined. So when you try and pull up a person's tares, you can not knowing pull up the wheat and the good that's in a person also. You're so insistent on them getting rid of all of those things that you don't like anymore, that while you got rid of all that stuff that you don't like, you find out that they don't like you. You managed to get rid of all of those tares, but you produced a totally different person because they would have been so much better if you could get rid of their tares. But because they were so closely entangled, every time you pulled up a tare, you pulled up a little bit of wheat. And a little bit of good was lost. And the result is something that you don't like and nobody can use. And many of us have been victims of constantly trying to live up to someone else's expectations, trying to change yourself for somebody else's good. They told you that you'd be much better if you would stop this, if you would not do that, if you could just change this. So you spent your whole life trying to change this for them. It's sometimes good to just let things be and appreciate what God allowed them to be. I found that some people may not be neat, they may not be timely, they may be a little bit different or disrespectful or may not be thoughtful about everything that they say, but they may love you and be devoted to you and care about you and are committed and pray for you. Can't that just be enough? Can't you let the good exist with the bad and let God take care of the rest? You see, if you would just accentuate the positive and eliminate the negatives, you find that pretty soon all of that stuff, by you enforcing and encouraging the good, it produces more good. And the more you encourage good in people, the more good that it inspires them to do. And soon that good outweighs the bad. You've forgotten about all of those tares. They may still be there, but they don't bother you like they used to, because you've chosen to emphasize and focus on the good in people. Wouldn't that be great if we just looked at everybody's good and you just looked at that? You didn't see all the negative things in the world. You saw the peace and the goodness and gentleness and kindness and the love, and you started to exemplify that. It's amazing how that can change the world. There were two boys that one was a really good student, the other wasn't a very good student, and was always in trouble. And the teacher had requested the parent to come to school. And when the parent shows up, the father shows up, the son that was always in trouble sees the father on campus, and he knew that he was in trouble. And he went in he followed his father to one of the conference rooms, and he stood outside the conference room and wanted to hear what the conversation was. But what the son did not know, that they were talking about the good son, not about him. So they asked the teacher says, what do you know about your son? And the father says, my son is the most wonderful kid. Talking about the good son. But the one outside the door thought he was talking about him. He said he's respectful. He's loving. He's kind. I look at him with such pride. And the best of him is still yet to come. And while he stood outside the door listening to his father testify about him, knowing that he did not live up to what his father was saying, it changed his life. Because the good was being poured into him from his father, the next day he went to school and he became a model student. His grades went up. His ambition was increased. His attitude changed. He was helpful and useful. When you sow good into people's lives, it can overcome all of the negativity they've ever had to endure. If you would just not focus on how bad they are, and every time something good happens, you're grateful for the good. You're thankful. You're inspiring them. You're giving them hope. And over time, hope will never disappoint. And some people are where they are because they have given up hope that things could ever get better. But as a believer, we can breathe hope into people. We can help them change their lives and give them a new direction just by inspiring hope. Don't try to pull up somebody else's tares, because in doing so, you'll pull up some of the wheat and some of the good. And what you're left with is something that you had never bargained for. The Bible says in Romans 15:1, those of us that are strong ought to bear with the infirmities of those that are weak. If we would spend our time just helping one another and just inspiring and giving good to one another, it's amazing how that can change lives. No one's tares are better than anybody else's tares. That's a good point. I like that. My tares are better. You got those scraggly tares, prickly, but my tares are sophisticated and neat. I trim my tares. We cannot judge others because of the things that they do and that we don't do. See, just because some people have done some things doesn't mean that you've not thought about it or maybe not had the courage to do it. Kim and I laugh sometimes because our children have more courage than we did when we were their age. They're more daring. They attempt things that I never would have attempted. And we were in a house here in Scottsdale in our backyard pool, and they were jumping off the second story into the pool. We kept in this big splash. I said, wow, jump from the pool, that's a big splash. And then I went on to Facebook. I catched them in mid-air. I said, what are you doing up there? Is this you? And then just jumping up there, starting with the picture off the second story. I never would have done that. But because you don't have the courage to do some things, don't deny that in other people. Don't try to reproduce yourself in other people's eyes, trying to make them, creating them in your image. Because you don't do something, you think that it's unfair and unright, or not right for them to do things a certain way. What makes us the standard? Why can we judge a person's tares and why they are the way they are and why they do what they do and why they say what they say? We cannot judge because someone's different. We all live by God's grace, right? By God's grace and mercy. So how do we stop the tares from taking over? That's a good question. Someone asked, how do we stop the tares from taking over? I want you to respond to that with me. How do you stop the tares from taking over in your life? Because eventually, if you just allow them, tares just continue to grow or they multiply. Tares don't need any irrigation, doesn't need any kind of nurturing. Tares just going to continue to produce. So how do we stop and control the amount of tares that are being produced over and over? All right. My thoughts is, again, you accentuate what is good. Everybody's going to be drawn and encouraged by the positive that are in a person's life. If someone says something that's good about you, it's going to make you want to do more of that. It's gratifying to hear positive things. We always want to hear something good, right? Something positive. I know you telling me about that. I never hear something positive from you. You ever heard that before? I never hear something positive. You always have something negative to say. So that tells us the first thing we need to do is figure out how to grace your conversation with something that's positive. Let your words be apples of gold and settings of silver, it says. So make sure the words are positive. It says to be an inspiration so that it adds grace to the ones that are hearing you. When you speak, people should be ready to listen to what you have to say because you have something inspiring, something positive, something encouraging to say. We plant more wheat. That's good. I like that. We plant more wheat. How do we plant more wheat? You know, if you've got a lot of tares, you plant more wheat. How do you plant more wheat in a person's life? There must be something we can do to help encourage and inspire more wheat to grow. Pray and continue to rebuke Satan. I know that's true. Don't over your spouse while they're sleeping, stand and say, I rebuke you, Satan, in the name of Jesus. Don't do that. Keep pointing. As they're leaving, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. It's not good. Not a good sign. Not a good sign. But continue to pray. See, the work has already been done on Calvary. The work has already been done. If we just have faith and believe, it's the love of Jesus that changes everything. That is the great mediator. As you keep loving a person, you can love a person out of addiction. You can love them out of whatever bad situation that they're in. You just keep loving them. Parents have done this all throughout. My brother that you saw here as a pastor, and you heard him preach the word, he kept my mother on her knees when we were growing up. If there was one that kept her on her knees, it was him. It was him. And he was out there. He was the one that the cops would show up. No matter where he goes, trouble would seem to follow him somehow. And he was going out to bars way before he was underage, just doing stuff because he just wanted to do it. And again, I was the one that was always too afraid to do it. He was breaking all the rules. And my mother just continued to pray. And one story is she would be out in praying for him, and he'd be out there in the world, and he was doing all kind of stuff. And one night, he came there, and my mother says that he fell down by her bedside while she was asleep. He came home. He said, Mama, I know you out there praying for me. And he said, I know you out there. Mama, you keep praying for me. And then she said it scared her. Because he comes in like 11, 12 o'clock at night. She is asleep, and he comes and lays up at her bedside and says, Mama, I know you out there praying for me. I want you to keep praying for me. Because the fervent, effective prayers of a righteous person avails much. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop praying and stop loving and believing that God can reach no matter how far a person goes. He has that reach. No matter where they go, they're never out of bounds when it comes to God. They're never so far that they're out of his reach. Keep praying. Keep loving him. But what we have to pray is God's will. Don't pray that they change because you want ultimately what you want. God, make them what I want them to be. Don't pray your will. Even with going to church, I just wish my husband would go to church. I wish my wife would go to church. I wish he would read the Bible more. I wish he would do this more. That is your relationship that you want them to have. But ultimately, you want a close relationship with them and Jesus. Because if you pray that relationship, then that would change all of that other stuff. Because a person can show up at church and not have that relationship with Jesus. They're showing up just to shut you up. Right? They can read the Bible every day and still not change on the inside. So ultimately what we're praying for is that relationship to change. And that's not about our will. That's not about changing actions. If a person's actions will change, and suddenly it means something has changed because you've been able to help divert the way a person does something. You ultimately want that relationship with Jesus to change. All right. God's ways are not our ways. Do you believe that? The Bible says, as far as the heaven is from the earth, are his ways from our ways, and his thoughts from our thoughts. I want to share a couple of points if I can. I'm not lose track of time up here. What Jesus had to say about adultery. Adultery. And this woman was caught in the act of adultery, and they came and threw her down at the feet of Jesus. She was caught in the act of adultery. And I'm going to read from John chapter 8, verse number 3. The scribes and Pharisees brought a woman to him, brought him a woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded that she should be stoned. But what did you say? You see that? They said, we caught this woman in the very act. We caught her right there in the middle, and we grabbed her, we brought her. So she must have been by herself, huh? Because it takes one, is that right? Something is missing. What's wrong with this picture, first of all, right? There's a problem with this picture. We caught her in the act of adultery, and we just grabbed her. That means that someone's getting away with this thing. So the law says that she should be stoned. No, the law says that both should be stoned. Right? But then they want to, we always tend to cast blame on that woman, right? We go back to the God, that woman. We blame the God, it'd be so much better if you brought me a different woman. That's how we think, right? Say, no, if you'd been a different man, you would have attracted someone different to you. But we tend to want to blame the woman. It's that woman. We caught her in the act of adultery, so we should stone her. The word says we should stone her, Jesus. What do you say? And Jesus knew what was in their hearts. And Jesus, he didn't comment. The Bible says he knelt down and began to write. And then he addressed and says, he who is without sin, cast the first stone. And they began to walk away. It says the older first, going down to the earlier and younger. See, none of us can really cast stones at anybody. We can accuse people about what they've done, but no, what about our stuff? Yes. What if we put your stuff on the screen? What if we play back some recordings that you did about 10 years ago? You bragging about some of your attributes and some of the things that you've done. Huh? When they start playing that, oh no, Pastor, don't play that. Don't play that. No, that's not run that. No, that's not. I know what that was about. It was so easy for us to cast stones at other people. When you live in glass houses, right, you shouldn't cast stones. The other part of the other scripture, Jesus says, in Matthew, you've heard it said that those who of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Again, it all starts. Guard your hearts. Guard your heart. Put God's word in your heart and guard your heart. Because once you see something, the opportunity of temptation comes to you, it starts to try to penetrate your heart. Any temptation begins with what you see or something that you hear. And if you dwell on that long enough, it starts to come in and try to penetrate your heart. And once it's in your heart, once you have something in your heart, it's now just a matter of opportunity. So we want to keep it out of our heart, right? Once you conceive something, it's not lying that makes you a liar. It's being a liar that makes you lie. It's not adultery that makes you an adulterer. It's being an adulterer that makes you commit adultery. See, once it's in your heart, it manifests you. And Jesus said, do not allow these things to be in your heart, because once you conceive them in your heart, that's what adultery is. It's not the act that you do. It's not allowing those things to get into your heart. So Jesus introduced a new law because we think if we've never done things, if we don't really commit the act, then we're okay. He says the act sometimes has already been committed in your heart.
When you had hatred about somebody and you just wish they died, or you wish the worst about somebody, don't allow that to infect your heart, because that infects you. You have to live with that negativity. And you have to live with all of that and how it changes your heart. And many of us have allowed negative events to get into our heart and change the way we think and our perspective on life. Don't allow things to get so into your heart that it changes you that way. Why do many relationships fail? Why do they fail? Why do you think people in marriage or relationships fail? What do you think is the common problem or fault that we find? Text me. I can't hear you. They fail. We meet the right person, right? We think of the right person, but sometimes over time things happen. Things happen, and it changes things. And then we sometimes want to blame that a person changed. Did they really change, or were they just being true to who they were all along? We fail in a relationship because we fall out of love. Oh, that's a challenge right there. Falling out of love. Oh, man. I don't know if we can do that. Can you really fall out of love? See, once love is there, love is something that gets a hold of you. And if it's really true love, it's difficult to let that go. You can love a person and somehow you just can't leave because the love just keeps you there. Love will just allow you to endure a lot of things because you love a person. I've seen people in an abusive relationship and they say, why don't you leave? And they just keep saying, I know he loves me. Or she loves me. There have been guys who have been abused too. Love will make a person endure a lot of things. And here's what I found. If you just don't give up on loving a person, love wins. Love wins. But sometimes we give up loving. I don't think we fall out of love. I think we give up sometimes loving. We give up because we get tired. We get weary because we've endured it, we believe, long enough. Or we've suffered long enough. And if God, if I suffer a little bit longer, will you let me out? God, I've had enough. How much more, God, before I get out of this? Come on, God. I'm dying here. And if I suffer long enough, God, if I go through enough pain, then you'll let me out. No, God says, if you can love will supersede all of that. Love, the Bible says, never fails. And we got to know that. Not the kind of love where we give it up to a point. Love is till death. Amen. Agape love is you're going to love them no matter what. No matter all of their faults, you're going to love everything about a person. That's difficult. And you can't do it with your love. It has to be the love of Jesus. Yes. We cannot produce the kind of love that's necessary to overcome evil that we are going to endure in our lives. You cannot generate that much love. But if you've got a source of love, and if you can really love with the love of Jesus, I'm telling you that love will penetrate the deepest and the hardest core of a person. And if a person can really get touched with the love of Jesus, it can begin to change them. The true love of Jesus will change a person. But that's not just you just doing something once in a while. That's not just putting up with something once in a while and then say, well, I tried that a few times, it didn't work. Love never fails. We fail. We stop loving. But if we would just continue, the Bible says that love never fails. Why? Because God is love. People have problems with relationships because they're not loyal, a lack of communication, or misunderstanding, or intent. Communication, I see this over and over. Communication, or not listening, communication, are unrealistic expectations. And communication is not just talking, but communication is more listening. Is that right? Communication happens partly by what we say, but a good part of communication is hearing. Because sometimes we don't hear the other person. We want them to be quiet so that we can speak. Okay, I'll listen to you. Okay, enough. Let me have the floor. Now I'm going to share. I'm going to talk. But communication is really listening. It's not so much just back and forth. It's really sharing and listening to a person. When you're not current, when you're not strong in your commitment to another person, and you're not speaking from the heart, those are things that cause a relationship to ultimately fail. Celibacy. Jesus talked about that in Scripture in Matthew chapter 18 and verse number 8 and 9. It talks about the difficulty we have in Matthew 18, 8 and 9. If your hand or foot causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. It's better for you to enter into life lame or maimed rather than having 2 hands and 2 feet and be cast into everlasting fire. So what that means ultimately is that any person, program, or teaching that threatens your spiritual growth, you have to let it go. Anything that threatens is a threat. It's not allowing you to grow spiritually, not allowing you to produce the kind of relationship that you know you should produce. You've got to let it go. That means you've got to stop some things. You've got to cease some things, cut it off so that you can grow. If there's certain programming that you're watching that's not good, certain music you listen to, there's certain friendships that you have or relationships that you have that's hindering your growth, stop it. You know what? When I was younger, I had my friends that weren't married and friends that I grew up with, and Ray Ray and Pookie and Boom Boom and all those. And whenever I had a problem, I'd go over there. And you know what Ray Ray has to say? Ray Ray is he's a wise man. You know, Ray Ray grew up in deep wisdom with Ray Ray. You know, with a name like Ray Ray, he's a philosopher, you know. And I tell you, I don't know. I know what I would do. Whenever a person tells you something like that, whenever somebody starts with, if it was me, that's not good. That's not good wisdom. Don't listen. Turn your hearing aid off. In fact, some people I would get their opinion so I know what not to do. You know, you are the antithesis of what I should do. You need people in your life on both sides. But again, you've got to learn how to cut off certain things that are not allowing you to produce the wheat and the good that you really want to produce. So celibacy is not about abstaining completely from what we know it to be, but it's abstaining from things that are not producing fruit. That's celibacy. Because the same things you do that leads to bad outcomes. And you don't try to stop the outcome, you stop what you're doing that leads you to the outcome. See, that's we always got to go to the root of something. Don't just try to stop doing this. Stop what causes you to do this. And that's where you have to learn how to be proactive. And lastly, divorce. Because some of us have gone through this. Whoever divorces his wife, it says this is in Luke chapter 16 and verse 18. Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery. Whoever marries her who is divorced from her husband commits adultery. And when they asked Jesus this, they really pressed Jesus. They're saying, well, Jesus, why should we get married? Because ultimately, people are going to have differences. And Jesus says in Scripture, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined by his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Now, this one flesh is so critical. When you take a garment and you sew together 2 pieces of fabric, you sew it together, there's going to be a seam there. And if it's going to tear, it's going to tear where the seam is, right? But if something is woven together and you weave it together, there's no seam. There's no weakness. There's no point of separation. And when you are one, you're no longer 2 parts that are joined together. You're now woven together. You see that? See, when you don't have that idea in mind that you're not just 2, we're not just joined together like by thread. We are woven together with Jesus Christ being that glue, that bind that brings us together. And that's what keeps us together. Now, when something is woven, you don't know where one began and the other ended because it's all one piece, right? So when you have this kind of oneness, the oneness that Jesus insists for us to have, how can you separate that? You cannot separate that kind of bond. But if we have in our mind that we're just joined together, mine, hers, his, hers. If you have his and hers at home, delete that, say ours, ours. Because there should be one. Now I know we have this one's hers and this one's mine. We have different checking accounts, we have different this, different that, and other. But when you really are thinking oneness, you learn how to make it all work as one. That's the principle that Jesus was trying to share. Because if we continue to try to live separate lives, we're really never embracing what oneness really means. And oneness means no longer 2, it means one. Where you don't know where one ends and the other begins. There's no your way of thinking or this way of thinking. We think one. And when you have this kind of oneness in how you think and what you do, it's impossible to separate that. How can you separate something that God has truly joined together as one? But when we don't have that oneness, when we have this idea that we're joined together, but we're still separate in our minds and how we do things. I know you're different individuals, but the goal of anyone who comes together is to seek oneness. And that comes through binding your relationship with Jesus Christ. That's where oneness comes from. All right. Last question I have for you, and we're done. What advice would you give to yourself? To yourself. You giving this advice to you. If you could do it all over again, what would you tell yourself? If you could do it all over again, I know we've all made mistakes, and we started and we judged people and we've been unfair, but if you could do it all over again, what advice would you give yourself? And this one I don't want you to text to me, I want you to text this one to yourself. And I want you to read that. And I want you to live up to that standard.